Hey guys, thanks for joining me today on another episode of Cartels on Earth. Today I'm going to be answering a question that I got a couple of times over the last couple of days. So I'm going to jump right into it. You guys wanted to know what cartels exist today in Colombia. Now, if I get into the topic of how many cartels and criminal organizations exist in Colombia today, Colombia is the largest producer in the world of this. We're going to be in that topic for a long time. A very, very long time. So I'm going to concentrate on two examples. One has a historical connection to the Medellin Cartel, and the other just happens to be the largest cartel in South America, and they just happen to be based in Colombia. So, alrighty, I'm going to start with the Oficina de Envigado. This one is not really a cartel. First of all, the Oficina Envigado loosely translates the Office of Envigado. For you guys who are extreme Pablo Escobar fans and love anything and everything related to him, you guys already know then that Envigado is the town that he was born in Colombia, in Medellin. So that's why it's called the Oficina de Envigado, because Pablo started this organization. Now, when Pablo started it in the 80s, it was more like a branch of the Medellin Cartel. And their job was to collect debt owed to them by other people. So if you owe the cartel money for whatever reason in Medellin, these people who worked in this department, and we'll call it a department, were responsible for collecting it. And when we mean collecting it, there's a good chance it was killing you to make a point. Now, the person that Pablo put in charge of this department was none other than someone you guys, I'm sure, know very well, and that would be Don Berna. We all know Don Berna from Narcos. He's played a big role in the show. He's been on, I think, all 3 seasons at some point. Don Berna, whose real name is Diego Fernando Murillo, was really close with Pablo back in that time. And he was pretty much in charge of this unit, this department. When Pablo died and the Medellin Cartel collapsed, Don Berna went ahead and kept this department to himself. And the name continues, Oficina de Envigado. Now, they're not really a cartel. I don't think we can call them a cartel. I don't think anyone does call them a cartel, but they are a very large criminal organization. They operate more like a mafia. Most of their funding comes from cocaine trafficking. One of their largest allies, actually, is Los Zetas from Mexico. So if you follow anything related to the cartels in Mexico, we all hear the news stories that they're always fighting for territory in Acapulco and Cancun and all across this country. Los Zetas, a very violent cartel in Mexico, is a very close ally of the Oficina de Envigado. So a lot of the cocaine that's coming to Los Zetas is coming from the Oficina of Envigado. So aside from that being their main source of income, like I said, they operate like a mafia. So they do a lot of money laundering throughout the city of Medellin. They own a lot of casinos. Casinos are big in Colombia, in Medellin in particular, and they own a lot of other gambling establishments. So with all those establishments that they own, it's easy for them to launder a lot of money. At the same time, these establishments operate as a storefront for selling their narcotics. Now, when Don Berna took over, he pretty much gave all the other criminal organizations in the city 2 options. You get out, or you work for me. One example of that was this gang called La Terraza, and they were known to have some of the best hitmen in Medellin. If you wanted someone killed, they would find it and make sure that person was dead. And let's just say that his reputation was so powerful and so strong after the cartel and helping bring down Pablo Escobar that no one argued with him. They either left or joined forces with him, and the gang La Terraza gladly joined forces with him. So Don Berna pretty much ended up controlling, at the height of the Oficina de Envigado when he was in charge, about 95% of the crime in the city. His power was so great that Medellin is a city of about 3.5 to 4 million people. It's comparable to the city of Los Angeles here in the U.S. Now, at one time, Don Berna could give an order for crime to just pretty much vanish. Crime and murders, everything. The crime rates would just completely collapse. And he could do vice versa. Give an order and crime would skyrocket. Now, it was so extreme that the crime just diminished at an order that he once gave that the people of Medellin had a name for it. They had a nickname. They took his name and coined it with a name that meant pretty much like of peace and tranquility. And they coined it together because there was this time that it was just unprecedented in Colombia's history, especially in Medellin. After 15, 20 years of fighting and bombs and the Medellin Cartel just bringing the city to its knees, they had a time where there was just so much peace. There was no murders. There was nothing, and it was all because Don Berna gave that order to the criminal world in Medellin, which he controlled mostly all of it, about 95% of it. He crime down, murders down. It was a benefit for him. He had a lot of political connections and a lot of connections with the police force, sergeants, captains. Even though he was a wanted drug lord and criminal. Usually when a criminal is committing a lot of crimes, there's more pressure on politicians and the police to get this criminal. He realized that, and he was in contact with a lot of these politicians. They were dirty, corrupt politicians. And one way that he would reduce the pressure of these people chasing him was by reducing crime. By reducing crime, there's not too much pressure for the police and the politicians to find this person. In an essence, also, of a politician can brag that the crime in his city is at its lowest it's been in ages and decades. I mean, if they're seeking re-election, that looks good on them to get re-elected. So Don Berna pretty much had them at a catch-22. He had them where he wanted them, in a sense. Like, he had control over the politicians and the police force. He controlled the crime world. He could bring the crime down to a minimum. He could just as much increase it. And it worked very well for him, because if he decreased it, they simply backed off a little bit off of him. And if he increased it because they started coming after him, he controlled the entire crime scene in the city. It was pretty much a win-win for him, one way or the other. Eventually he got caught. He did get caught. He did get caught in 2005. That didn't stop him from running his organization. He ran it perfectly fine from prison. No issues whatsoever. He did eventually get extradited to the U.S. in 2008. And since then, the organization has pretty much lost its structure. There's been a lot of infighting and struggle for control. His son took over for a minute, for a little while, until he got caught. He got caught earlier this year, February 2018. His alias is Lindo, if anyone wants to look into him. It still has a good stronghold in the criminal world of Colombia, but it has lost a lot of its power. Although there is a good chance if you run into a gang member or anyone gang-related in Medellin, they work for the Oficina de Envigado. So that's pretty much a summary of the Oficina de Envigado. Not really a cartel, more like a criminal organization that operates very similarly to a mafia. Now, the next guy. These guys are big. This is a big cartel. They are the largest cartel in South America, all the entire continent. They're called El Clan del Golfo. They also have another name, El Clan Usuga, either or. It used to be, technically it was called El Clan del Golfo, and then they changed their name to El Clan Usuga based on the last name of the founder and the person who's in charge now. It was founded in 2001 by Daniel Rendon Herrera, who was helped by none other than the Castaño brothers. If you watch Narcos, you know anything about the narco world or the paramilitaries in Colombia, you know who they are. They have an extreme reputation, not the best, but they were very big, very well known. This clan is about 1,500 members strong. They control 50% of the cocaine that leaves the country. It's a lot. Considering Colombia is the largest producer of cocaine in the world, 50% is a lot of cocaine. billions and billions and billions. I would bet money that it's way more money now. It's being exported than in money wise than when Medellin and Cali were doing it. They've gotten much more organized. And with working with the Mexicans, I'm sure they can get a lot more to Mexico now than they could ever before. They actually work with Mexico very well. Their biggest ally in Mexico is El Chapo's Sinaloa Cartel. So it's a very, very big connection there. We all know El Chapo. We've all heard the story. El Chapo's worth billions, so we know where this coke is coming from. El Chapo's Sinaloa Cartel is one of El Clan del Golfo's biggest allies. Huge. I think what makes them so successful in this, I honestly to say, is they're very organized. They are very well structured. Their training is like a military. All the members are very well paid. So because of all that, there's no infighting. There's no struggle for power. There's no fighting within members. It keeps the structure of the business intact, and you get to maximize what you can from it because you don't have to worry about petty issues like that. Infighting, you can lead to the collapse of any kind of organization. So if you can avoid that altogether, it's only gonna help your business in the long run. The current leader of El Clan del Golfo is Dario Antonio Usuga, whose alias is Otonil. He's the most wanted man in Colombia. There is a $5 million reward for him if you catch him, dead or alive, and it will be paid out in US dollars. So heads up in case anyone wants to make $5 million. They're not exclusive to just Medellin. They have bases all over the country. They're in the states of Antioquia and Córdoba. They're in Bogota. They're in Medellin. They're in the coast. Their name implies the clan of the Gulf. So they actually have their territories include the coasts, the Caribbean and the Pacific coasts, which allows them to control the ports. If you control the ports, you can control as much as you want of this leaving the country. So it's a huge benefit for them. You guys know the geography of Colombia, Medellin. The Medellin Cartel didn't have that luxury. They're landlocked. Medellin is in a valley. They're not by water. Cali, on the other hand, they're only about an hour and a half, 2-hour drive from the coast. So they control the port of Buenaventura on the Pacific coast. So it was a huge help for the Cali Cartel having access to a port. Medellin didn't have that. So for this cartel to have access to both coasts, the Caribbean and the Pacific, it's a massive, massive win for them. It's huge. It's very beneficial for their business. Let's see. What didn't I share with you guys? Let's see. Told you they own their own labs. They do own their own labs. Not as many. From what I hear, they do purchase a lot of their coke, but they do own a lot of their labs. Now, a side note for them is you don't have to necessarily work for them or buy their product to be a part of a cartel. But if you happen to utilize one of their exit ports to get your product out of the country, they expect you to pay a tax. These guys are worth more money the further north you go. In Colombia, they're not worth as much as they would go for here in the United States or in Europe. So for a kilo, they charge about $150. They do expect you to pay. If they find out you got your product out and you did not pay your tax, it's not a matter if they will kill you, it's a matter of when they will kill you. So just like any other cartel, they're very ruthless and they will make it known that they are not to be messed with. So that's pretty much it on these guys. Very powerful cartel. I don't think they're as big as Medellin and Cali, but they're definitely up there. And they're not to be messed with. And especially with a $5 million bounty on your head to be paid in US dollars, you know you're important when they don't want to pay you in pesos, they want to pay you in dollars. Guys, I appreciate the questions. Keep them coming, and I will do the research. I will find out, and if I don't know, and if I do know, I'll just make the video faster. But I try to get as many details as possible so you guys get the right facts. Thanks for watching this episode. Comment below, like, subscribe, message me on Instagram if you have any questions. Follow me on Instagram, and I hope to see you on the next video. Thank you so much. Take care.